France is absolutely furious at Donald Trump and his regime, and they are preparing for war behind the scenes. France, Germany, many other countries in Europe, Canada, and others have made secret plans about how they will respond if the Trump regime invades Greenland. Also, we saw Denmark respond forcefully, reminding the United States that they have a doctrine. If they suspect an invasion is taking place, they will shoot first and ask questions later. Denmark, with the support of Europe, with the support of France, sending a clear message to the United States. If you invade, not only will NATO no longer exist, we are prepared to fight you. We are prepared to go to war. This is not what you did with Venezuela, where you took out Maduro and installed Maduro, another Maduro puppet, Delcy Rodriguez. Denmark, France, and Germany is ready for war with you, Donald Trump. That's the message that is being sent right now. I'm going to show you a clip in a moment of French President Emmanuel Macron, as well as the French ambassador to the United Nations. But first, I want to share what Reuters is reporting as well, that European allies, including France and Germany, are coordinating their response in case the U.S. moves to take control of Greenland. So France is working with its partners on a plan. How will it respond if the U.S. invades? They're getting prepared. They're taking it very seriously. Then Denmark put out the following statement. Denmark will shoot first and ask questions later over Greenland. Do you understand that language better, Donald? Is that the mafia language that you like? They're going to shoot first and ask questions later. If you want a war with NATO, it'll be disbanded and they will go to war with you. If that's what you think about your Donroe doctrine in controlling the Western Hemisphere. Let's take a look at how it's reported by The Telegraph. Denmark will shoot first and ask questions later over Greenland. Danish soldiers will be required to shoot first and ask questions later if the United States invades Greenland under the Army's rules of engagement. On Wednesday, the Danish Defense Ministry confirmed the existence of a 1952 rule requiring soldiers to immediately counterattack invading forces without awaiting orders. The Defense Ministry also said that the rule remains enforced when asked about its status by a center-right-leaning Danish newspaper, the Berlingske. This week, Donald Trump has threatened to invade Greenland over and over again, to which Greenland said, we're not for sale. Denmark said, they're not for sale. And according to this Danish newspaper, the 1952 rule states that in the event of an invasion, the attacked forces must immediately take up the fight without waiting for or seeking orders, even if the commanders in question are not aware of the declaration of war or state of war. When approached for comment, the Danish Defense Ministry told the newspaper the order on precautionary measures for military defense in the event of attacks on the country and during war remains in full force and effect. And European allies have held these meetings about how they will respond. We want to take action. We will do so together with our European partners. A German government source also told Reuters separately that Germany was working closely together with European countries in how to respond and protect Greenland in the event of a United States invasion. This is what French President Emmanuel Macron had to say, and it should be noted as well that there was a coalition of the willing meeting that took place in Paris over the past 48 hours. It was hosted by France. The United States was there. If you take a look at this photo that was posted by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, you will see all the way on the far right, and I think they were put there intentionally, is the United States pro-Russia delegation of Jared Kushner. Why the hell is he even involved in this? But we know that Jared Kushner's got his money-grubbing hands and the Saudis and all this crap all over it. And then we've got Steve Witkoff there as well. Here is French President Emmanuel Macron talking about what France will do in the event of the United States invasion. Here, play this clip.
Faites-vous toujours confiance? Do you still trust Donald Trump after his remarks regarding the annexation of Greenland?
There is no scenario in my opinion, where the United States of America would be placed in a position to violate Danish sovereignty. Such a thing simply does not exist. And therefore, I cannot possibly believe that he would betray his other commitments concerning Greenland. Greenland, therefore, is a territory that falls under Danish sovereignty. This will endure, and I know that the American people will continue to move forward with us for peace and security in Europe.
Next, let me share with you how the French ambassador to the United Nations described the U.S. invasion of Venezuela. Now, just to see France, a former top ally of the United States, speak out this way against the United States at the United Nations Security Council a few years back would be unfathomable, unthinkable, impossible. But under the Trump regime, with Donald Trump declaring that he and the MAGAs, and what Trump's view is that America's a predator. That's what they keep on saying. They keep saying they're predators. We're predators. And as predators, we must do what predators do and dominate the Western Hemisphere. Let's show you this clip of the ambassador to the United Nations from France. Here, play this clip.
Mr. President, the military operation which has led to the capture of Nicolas Maduro runs counter to the principle of peaceful dispute resolution and runs counter to the principle of non-use of force. The proliferation of violations of the Charter of the United Nations and of violations of international law by states vested with responsibility as permanent members of the Security Council chips away at the very foundation of the international order. Contravening the principles of the Charter, including the principle of respect for independence and the territorial integrity of states, undermines the foundation of the United Nations and weakens international peace and security. France remains faithful and committed to respect for the Charter of the United Nations and of the principle of peaceful dispute resolution. We have an obligation to uphold these principles at all times and in all places. Respect for these principles is indispensable.
Now, also this week, it should be noted that President Zelensky, Macron, Keir Starmer signed an important declaration of intent to deploy a future European multinational force in Ukraine, that if there were to be a deal with Russia, that Europe would commit its armed forces in the event of a Russian invasion after a peace deal. In addition, Prime Minister Carney, over the past 24 hours, meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, he described the alliance's efforts to secure peace in Ukraine and the need for robust security guarantees to increase the capabilities that our allies. Canada is quadrupling its defense spending over the next decade, part of our mission to rearm and reinvest in the Canadian forces. Now, Donald Trump's like, you see, I got Canada to raise its military budget. Look what I'm doing. Yeah, they're raising their military budget to protect against an invasion from you. Canada is preparing in the event that you, Trump regime, invade Canada. And we showed how some of the conservatives, not like conservative in theory per se, but some of the real kind of center of the line Canadian newspapers are now saying Canada should prepare for a potential war and that the United States is serious about taking over Canadian sovereignty. Now, earlier in the day yesterday, Caroline Leavitt, there she is right there, dressed like Pink Dress Lady from North Korea. She chose the exact same outfit as Pink Dress Lady. I think Caroline Leavitt's even a more ridiculous figure than Pink Dress Lady, but that's just me. I think Kim Jong-un wished that Pink Dress Lady was as propagandy, it's not even a word, was even more of a propagandist, like Caroline Leavitt. Here's what Caroline Leavitt said when she was asked by state regime media Fox about why don't you just say you're not going to invade Greenland? Like, they're an ally, Denmark's an ally. Why can't you just rule that out? Watch what Caroline Leavitt has to say. Play this clip.
Caroline, just following up on Greenland, why not rule out taking it by military force?
I know that past presidents and past leaders have often ruled things out. They've often been very open about ruling things in and basically broadcasting their foreign policy strategy to the rest of the world, not just to our allies, but most egregiously to our adversaries. That's not something this president does. All options are always on the table for President Trump as he examines what's in the best interests of the United States. But I will just say that the president's first option always has been diplomacy. Again, look at Venezuela. He tried ardently to strike a good deal with Nicolas Maduro, and he told him, I will use the United States military and you will not like it if you don't take such a deal. And look at what happened. With respect to Iran, the president said the same thing, right? He tried to have serious interest in a deal with the Iranian regime with respect to their nuclear capabilities. Were not interested, and so Operation Midnight Hammer happened, which was another remarkable military success under the leadership of this commander-in-chief. So the president keeps his options open, but diplomacy is always the first.
Ever wake up sweaty, freezing, or just uncomfortable? The temperature in your bedroom can make or break your sleep. That's why I switched to Miracle Made sheets. They're inspired by NASA technology and use silver-infused temperature-regulating fabric to help you sleep perfectly all night long. Miracle Made sheets are crafted with NASA-inspired, silver-infused fabric that helps regulate your body temperature. Hot sleeper, cold sleeper, it doesn't matter. These sheets help keep you in the comfort zone all night long. Thanks to their antibacterial silver technology, Miracle Made sheets stay cleaner and fresher up to 3 times longer than regular sheets. That means fewer odors, fewer wash cycles, and way less laundry. They feel just as good, if not better, than sheets you'd find at a 5-star hotel, but without the steep price tag. Smooth, breathable, and ridiculously comfortable. Upgrade your sleep or give the gift of better rest. Go to trymiracle.com/Meidas to try Miracle Made sheets today. You'll save over 40%, and when you use promo code Meidas, you'll get an extra 20% off plus a free 3-piece towel set. They make an amazing gift. With a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk. That's trymiracle.com/Meidas, code Meidas at checkout. Thanks to Miracle Made for sponsoring this episode.
Meanwhile, you have some Republicans like Congressmember Bacon, who is more of a centrist if there were some. All of the centrists are leaving at the end of this term, like Bacon's going to be gone. But here's what he had to say. Play this clip.
I hope Republicans stand up against this, universally oppose and give the feedback to the president, because this is appalling. Greenland is a NATO ally. We have a base on Greenland. We could put 4 or 5 bases on Greenland. They wouldn't mind that. They would make agreements with us on mining. Denmark is one of our best friends. They had more people per capita die in Afghanistan and Iraq fighting for us in Iraq and Afghanistan. So they're a proven ally. So the way we're treating them is really demeaning, and it has no upside. All it does is making our NATO allies angry. It's creating distrust. And there is no upside to it. And we're not going to acquire Greenland. I know most people in Greenland want to remain independent Greenland, with Denmark providing, some protection. And they count on us. We're NATO allies. We have bases there, and we can build on that. So this is one of the silliest things I have heard come out of the White House in the last year, and it's unacceptable. And I hope other Republicans line up behind me and make it clear to the White House it's wrong.
And here's what Bacon said earlier in the day when he was asked by Manu Raju. Play this clip.
Greenland wants to work with us, so does Denmark. There is no reason for these threats and insinuations that everything's on the table to include military. It's just wrong. I feel like it's very I use this word right now, maybe too much, but very amateurish. I feel like we've got high school kids playing Risk.
Now, here is what Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who's also resigning, had to say. Play this clip.
Do you want Stephen Miller to lose his job?
Look, either Stephen Miller needs to get into a lane where he knows what he's talking about, or get out of his job. Look, the reason why I thought it was important for me to make a comment on the floor is I've been the Republican leader of the Senate NATO Observer Group since 2018. There is no more important alliance than the NATO alliance. And Denmark has punched above its weight. It came to Afghanistan, lost 43 soldiers on the ground, fought in some of the most contested regions, honoring their Article 5 commitment to the United States.
I think they lost more soldiers than any other country per capita.
Per capita, they did. And Jake, they were in among the NATO allies at the time. It was 30 nations. They were among the top 6 and think about all the nations bigger than them. So to have the prime minister suggest that they have to be prepared for some sort of action by the United States suggests to me that Mr. Miller does not know anything about the alliance, the importance of it. And, generals, I was on Senate Armed Services for 8 years, and generals would always say the same thing. The only thing worse than going to war with allies is going to war without allies. This alliance is critically important. Shaking that alliance sends a signal to Putin that he's winning, and Stephen Miller doesn't represent the U.S. government. He represents the Article 2 branch, and I, as a member of the U.S. Senate, get to weigh into this issue, and I know, whether they say it out loud or not, most of my colleagues agree with me.
But you've got a lot of MAGAs who are just like this guy, MAGA Republican Senator Eric Schmidt. And Eric Schmidt says, no, we need to conquer Greenland. And Schmidt's got a lot of influence in MAGA world. He's not a guy who's resigning, and he's part of the Trump go to war with Greenland crowd. You're going to throw away the NATO alliance, go to war with what? France is a nuclear power as well. That's what we're going to do here. Play this clip.
Did Greenland come up at all, sir? Did Greenland come up at all? Not in.
Do you have a personal opinion on that? Are you concerned about military action in Greenland?
I personally think that we ought to be active in pursuing Greenland. Absolutely. I think if you acquiring Greenland is be my support. I would support that. That's not what anybody's talking about. First of all, Denmark's claims are nebulous. People sort of skip over that page in history of their claims to Greenland. But I would fully be supportive of Greenland being a much more integral partner of the United States of America. If you look at a globe from on top, all of our defense of the Western Hemisphere, of the homeland, whether it's ballistic missile defense or in space, Greenland has an incredible strategic value and the critical minerals there. The other thing I would point out, China and Russia are operating off the coast of Greenland. Denmark is not capable of protecting Greenland. And so, in my view, we have a very keen interest in Greenland.
Denmark is willing to work with the U.S. Why does the U.S. have to own it? Denmark. Denmark is willing to work
Denmark's
with the
not capable of the protection that we need for our country. That's the problem.
And meanwhile, J.D. Vance, drenched in eyeliner and ridiculous amount of makeup, was giving an interview with State Regime yesterday. And here's what he told State Regime media. He goes, the Democrats say Trump is greedy. What's he greedy? He's not enriching himself. Play this clip.
I think it's interesting. The Democrats call the president greedy, but in what sense has any of this enriched him or enriched the administration? It's enriched the American people, which is what you want out of an American president. Somebody who's thinking to themselves, how do I serve the American people's best interest? How do I go and accomplish good things for the American people? That's a good thing to have in an American president. You want somebody who's greedy for the American people. The Democrats are greedy for themselves.
And then J.D. Vance says, we're going to control all the natural resources of Venezuela. Play this clip.
Taking out a dictator in Venezuela. How does that help the average American?
Well, a few things, Jesse. First of all, what it means is we're going to be able to control the incredible natural resources of Venezuela, which is good for America in a few ways. Number one, it allows us to put leverage on our enemies. Number two, it makes sure that if Americans need high quality, low cost power, we're always going to have access to it.
And I just want to show you that in France, they are getting the actual truth about what's happening in Venezuela. It's refreshing to hear non-state regime media, and all of our corporate media is not telling you the accurate story about what's happening in Venezuela right now. What's happening is you have the colectivos, these gangs, these paramilitary groups roaming the streets, going through people's phones in Venezuela. And if they have any sympathies to the U.S., they're being killed or they're being rounded up. There is no pro-opposition voice in Venezuela right now speaking publicly because they're terrified, because Delcy Rodriguez and Diosdado, the henchman, and Delcy, who was Maduro's right hand, who's an authoritarian, repressive. Most people in the pro-democracy movement view Delcy as pro-terrorism, pro-Iran, pro-Russia, pro-China, that Delcy's in charge. So here's how France 24 reports on things accurately about what's really happening on the ground right now in Venezuela, not the U.S. propaganda. I think that's why it's newsworthy and important for you to hear. Here, play this clip.
Supporters of Nicolas Maduro turn out en masse in the streets of Caracas, calling for the release of the Venezuelan president and his wife after their abduction by the United States. Among the protesters, Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello, who has also been indicted in the case against Maduro.
The imperialist knows that it has a prisoner of war on its territory, kidnapped here where the majority of Venezuelans elected him to be the constitutional president of our homeland. The Bolivarian revolution will move on forward, and they are going to have to return Nicolas and Cilia to us.
Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's former vice president, who has been sworn in as interim head of state, maintained in a televised address she was in control of the country despite the threats of Donald Trump, who wants access to Venezuela's oil.
The Venezuelan government rules our country, no one else. There is no external agent governing Venezuela.
Well, there you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe, help us get to 6 million subscribers, and we appreciate all of your support.
New Meidas merch. Head to store.meidastouch.com today and get yourself the best pro-democracy gear and show your support. That's store.meidastouch.com.